regarding the stimulus bill, the measures to do gender studies with Afghanistan is where and how. For example, in all the countries, there's a method that came from some ancient times. So we have Afghanistan families tied to Wethersfield, Connecticut, interbranch. Russian families. This is intercities. Already they've been fabricating audio. In other words, against their own and ours against our own, hundreds of nations. And this makes syntax phenomenon and sense and sensibilities where here and there, fake integrity of words, of syntax treatments, of teaching, and pretending other is needed because where that is valued, where and how there's a abridged constitution here and there, where the constitution simultaneously its values. So, for example, they have motivations where and how. They have North Korean and South Korean families that are involved with psychology, and or not. Even just Taekwondo and training of police forms. They make instances with locations. Afghanistan, the people involved with World Trade Center attack, predicate acts with the justice racketeering every single day in courts since before our founding. What does it say? So what are correlations simultaneously inherent, active, and progressive means? Because simultaneously, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously more finite than that, while as those means. And simultaneously greater than that, while as those means. There are three identities of conjunction into modern language, as we'll learn, per Anthony Wall, myself. youtube.com/user/Raymond. You heard it here first, but we'll examine this, and everyone will learn it. But so, for example, this is about identities, identity of science, which is tied to our syntax nature. So where and how, for example, they make treatments in Russia about America and in America about Russia, they're using their identities. They're leaving out how they have to hide the same line progressions. Here and there, they have a whole bunch of other families. They already have uses of power, for example, in relationship to this. They pretend they can't fathom how they could be in collusion with people like that. In other words, further with a principal child offenders campus. What is actually, I never had a personal conversation with a Mr. Neville, who was my English teacher in 8th grade, either. He's involved with the intelligence community, including judges, prosecutors, and their family members and kids. Through time already involved with a whole bunch of natures of predicate acts. Now this is where they are victim predators, in collusion with their own patients and criminals, other predators. This is where everyone's a predator at the same time. Thank God, because you can see, because it shows the method. That forgiveness is about not giving up to. It's about overcoming it by syntax-wise, by using correlations simultaneously inherent, active, and progressive means. As 1/3/5, identities of sequence nature, /simultaneous nature, in demonstration as one identity of volumes, one identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that increasing simultaneously, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously as an identity of sequence/simultaneous nature further from inside itself. So, for example, only the extent of it is debatable. But since founding, what is recorded is that the branches of government are in collusion. Left, self-valued, criminally foreign influence, every modern nations. And they are shared here and there as legal natures, as one's training it, as people speaking for all words/values like crimes, leaving out the crime method. So leaving out the crime methods increasingly, self-valued, blamed on other things, others themselves, and that defended. That simultaneously needing to self-value and defend. Self-value because identity is the volume science. We're not putting theory. This is relativity science. We're not putting theory first. See, those are syntax victim-predator roles with legal racketeering, which is way worse than that even. It's an identity theft / fraud method where the slash equals the value of what is active. Simultaneously, it equals the value of what is inherent, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. For example, that being distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, the value of the order of the finite, the value of the smallest thing. Distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, because one identity of volume that's how it demonstrates itself, by showing what is distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous. It shows a method of thought, of ratiocination / pseudo-ratiocination. Tactically ulterior from the physical delusions and the rules, crimes, methods, and predators associated with the private, associated with the branches of government here and there, hundreds of nations at once. And then they speak for religion because they have their identity of the ground religious locations. It's all right, if they wanted to do it legitimately, be distinct takes on religions. And so, this is what the experts agree is, a religion that's known and logical. And if people say that, okay, I'm this religion or that religion, but I don't agree with the Orthodox. That is what those are. They have those written down as symptoms, as people associated with court cases. They already had to hide lie progressions. They've been stacking fabricated audio and video transcripts, descriptions of them into databases since founding. You can't discern that. American people can discern this. To hide this, they pretend they use truth for a lie, way worse than lies, and way worse than just methods and weapons by one method. All those crazy laws and the people that back them, the real motivations that are easy to discern, way more is easy to discern. But it shows how people discern things like, the same, like what's the cause of slavery? And they owe money. No. There's a breaching method to all identity of the ground locations. That was in complete possession of the syntax nature, therefore the functions of each identity of the ground location, of the value as a value / value progression. Now this knew that we would need to use the finite, active, and progressive names of all identity of the ground locations simultaneously with names of people and of species and of finite, active, and progressive, finite grouped and things all together. Because what is simultaneously all together is inseparable from every subject / S. That's how science, what it reveals. See, but we are prevented free speech offensively while they are pretending other. So they would leave out their roles with all instances of the ground locations. So we have, police departments and have police forms in collusion with each other. The executive branch, the judicial branch, and the political branch as syntax nature, victim predators per a method. And so when that causes negative value nature progressions, excuse me. Oh, yes?
My cousin is coming, you know that.
Inside? No.
We're going to stay outside.
Watch the way the wind's going. Don't stand downwind. No, don't stand sideways from the wind, you guys. So that's what you do. Everyone stands to let the wind blow between you. If you have to blow people. It's no good if you're downwind from someone and you're outside and invisible. We're going to change the means. This is the value, why we have value treatment, syntax-wise. Why really forced? Forced ignored, though, because we have exceptions, exception nature, tall identity, ground locations. Engineered. Victims that self-value. Means to counter the negative value nature, progressions, acts, and natures. By and as defenses of pseudoscience, pretending integrity anyway. Needing to, and already having forsaken those short words actually capable of and obligated to be taught to the youngest kids and to the oldest kids distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. With this worse than obfuscated, not for the real, not even for the real reasons that are there. Those are for the one that has them bound, and uses of that. So people associated. There are people with military police families, and all the ones that already had been using their information, like a Justin Klavinskas, associated with all uses of white power groups. Involved with identity thefts and frauds, falsified police reports, predicate acts with databases with kids, and then uses of that. It's tied to their roles with Taekwondo places. All along Route 3, there's one near Route 3, and there are a whole bunch of people all along Route 3 involved with identity thefts, frauds, where everyone speaks to other, where the small world / big world is being exploited. With a sequence nature of everyone's hearing about people's names, right down to when they hear it. This is because of how the identity, the ground locations are actually being and having been used. This is what really explains the complete remote possession of the fake integrity, arrays of differences and people hating each other and like each other that are in collusion with those premises treatments, with those sequence shifts, with those finite active progressive lies, identity thefts and frauds, overt / insidious and simultaneously preventing free speech. That anyone's going to use science and correlation nature simultaneously, inherent active and progressive means. This is way worse than racism. This is all identities of difference employed to keep differences voiced from being voiced. There's all identities of difference employed to self-value that as a breaching screen, self-valued roles, needing to blame on other things other than themselves, that not realizing actual motivations tied to how they have each age of fact, shape, and nature tactically pseudo-educated, every modern nation sickly distinctly, self-valuing the identity thefts and frauds perpetrated against your founding parents, against our founding parents, America. You have that self-value. That's what's actually recorded. You left out how they didn't have free speech. You left out how they didn't have means to have the Constitution, surface values simultaneously defended, not defended, delineated, because of how they made them entertain to already having been entrenched too long. Uses of criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and criminal insidiousness natures of negative treatments. We're going to need to use phrases like criminal enterprise. Not like, for example, if someone had, this is worse than interstates, criminal enterprise. This just doesn't mean someone has an enterprise that is criminal. This is the phraseology we're going to have to use where and how they have phraseology with war in relation to legal terms with war crimes and with interstate crimes, and they left out roles with archetypal breaching method crimes, which haven't been defined in relationship to how it hasn't been defined how there are three identities of conjunction, not just the correlative and the coordinating conjunction. So also, not just subordinate, or complete or clause, or subordinated clause. There is a Trinity /S, inseparable from all things. Bach sings, for example, you have an identity that is all the individual identities of your cells, of your body, as we are taught and can examine. I never examined the cell of a human body or an animal, but I in biology class, the cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall, and we are taught that we are made of cells, and that there is a cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall. So the cell walls connect in the body of value, invisible but discernible, and all this. So each cell is a complete identity. Simultaneously, there's a semi-nature relationship to your identity, your cells. Individually grouped and together, so that group difference, ages, areas, sexes, locations, areas, states, because that identity is invisible but discernible. The ancient language, the ancients revealed using science, correlation, nature, simultaneously, inherent, active, progressive means. Again, by what is simultaneously, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously more finite while greater than that. And that shows what is distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. Itself as one identity of volume, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that. Increasingly, which is caused from inside itself, where temporary, forever nature is making more temporary /lasting forever nature. See, now it is through value systems defended syntax-wise, simultaneously can't afford the short words, or therefore especially the long words, using short words that are using truth that is true always, not denying exceptions, not valuing the exceptions denied. For example, not valuing the abridged sciences, pretending they can't realize how it's an imperfect world. So this is how our industry is. We're scientists. We have to be industry too, but simultaneously, they make opinions as scientists. Oh, but that's just our opinions. They're evaluating the arrays of difference. Oh, well, I have insights because we counter the Russians. We're the experts to go on the news and speak about it, then defend that. Then they have to defend that. This is a method that uses how when we were kids, they have our kids here and there shared with the schools per them. People associated with the intelligence community, investigators, vetting identities. So they have an identity theft or frauds method that knew that fake integrity victims would pretend their integrity, have to pretend their integrity anyway. That's why we have fake integrity, interbranch, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously in collusion with the private, and collusion with way worse, preventing free speech using methods of pretending not to understand people, fabricating audio or video transcripts simultaneously, and that increasingly brings up more subjects and names. So that puts each person of each age of fact, cheap nature, in complete who tries to use the syntax native pure, even if you're not native, which you're obligated to do, because it's about the exploitation of the human identity of volume, science, not theory. Not science pretending, well, science has to use theories because they're theory, because there are things we know, things we don't. That's why we have to address, too, how the identity of the ground locations are involved with database racketeering, way worse than war crimes. Simultaneously, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. Which is in relationship to how everyone is kept motivated to keep what is actually, that identity of volume that's actually simultaneously inherently distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously in relationship to itself, a perfect value progression, that which generates all that is inherent, active, and progressive. Only extent of it is debatable. But we have formally the branches of government all privatized to them. Avert criminal enterprises, killers, people associated with the body dumping spots, people associated with the whole thing, all aspects of it, simultaneously pretending to be other, as the investigators too. These are whole investigative bodies. Wethersfield police, Wethersfield interbranch families, all privatized to them, all identity ground locations uses, then therefore the sensibility of everyone uses other people's names. Involved with sequence shifts, involved with methods where they make instances where people are pretending are being filmed and or spoken, so then people I knew them, but they will never be able to speak honestly about those contexts, and they're also attaching people to fake contexts, and this is increasingly. And it's tied to the predicate acts that they're stacking in the child campuses. Sickly distinctly from how they've been doing it. See, they set it up to be simultaneous before our founding parents were even born. They had this method employed against each identity of the ground location in what is now North America, what is now the entire globe. Anywhere the identity of the species is, where there is correlation, there are short words with inherent active and progressive means. If they voice themselves in relationship to the fake positive and negative treatments, fake meaning criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments, especially differentially. For example, criminally legalized, but especially criminally legalized, because that sustained allowed them to set up, like the way a computer works, a method of mimicking what is simultaneous and what is perception sequence, and sequence defenses. And so then reaction to phenomenon effectively maintain self-value per a method that keeps the motivations for hundreds of nations to stay roles against people they don't even know, or people they go out of their ways to know, or that as everyone when they're presented to each other. Roles with remote uses of everyone and of the branches of government individually grouped and together differentially. Simultaneously, that is commonly uses of identity, uses of all those people's treatments of other people's names. Words like criminal, Words like integrity. There's no integrity. And there is integrity simultaneously, but we're not being able to show how there is simultaneously positive and negative, bound by what will only stay positive unto it as itself. There's a big difference between making positive out of negative and of revealing positive where it will only stay an increasing identity of volume. See, we have to this science reveals simultaneously that the exceptions in exception nature, syntax-wise, to the proofs that are properly leading a syntax unfolding of logic, of proper uses of people's names, of mandated law, name/value. So we have judges and police forms offensively with locations, crimes, methods, and motivations, for example, with the worst kinds of people as victim predators. I'm not judging people. I'm just saying there's killers. So they're making theories about the killers, but simultaneously, the way they're trained to on campuses, they're going to defend that. They're keeping the sense and sensibilities of the identities of law. Like, for example, with the bombing in Nashville, Tennessee. The FBI and the CIA are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by people I don't even know. But I can prove this. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, their family members, were involved with media locations, on off that, with predicate acts of other motivation, with cases. Their roles with fabricating, acting with locations. So then they could have fake sides of correlation nature. Fake side, which is a trinity, which is what is inherent, active, and progressive, bound distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. So the slash is a distinct nature of conjunction. And slash solidus. There were other names for it. I read about this on Wikipedia. I'll show you how we who know less words than the people of the experts of the sciences, how that was engineered to keep, how that is maintained to keep types of experts self-valuing abridged identity of the ground sciences, so not realizing self-abridged identity of the ground locations. So this keeps the branches of government their kids. Then, therefore, all the people tied to them need to hide lie progressions. Increasingly tied to how evidence racketeering, only capable of being originally and still. That's recorded evidence. We have the that debated by people who are dishonest. It also has people in collusion with that which prevents proper evidence reception and legal evidence perception as the law, pretending others simultaneously. So they forge names and switch names rather than allowing the, if you call the police, they replace what is actually recorded audio and video with fabricated audio and video. They put you into fake locations and then pretend that's real and that you're the one not telling the truth. Now they're recorded, confessed, and this is provable. But you have to have people to so they make people, but you have to keep talking. I mean, they make people shut up because they don't let them speak about what is actually recorded. Because of the roles of the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and of the branches of government with the investigators' investigations already in layers built. Needed to hide lie progressions further. Needed to hide that further. before anyone was even born. And see, that method knew that. And then it engineered, if anyone is not entertaining the narratives of the fake positive and negative treatments quality, the physical delusions of the branches of government individually together and grouped when they speak, like about what Jim Crow laws were about, / are about. Everyone speaks with that with recorded criminal foreign influence premises treatment self-value. That's evidence. And it's relative to where and how they have been preventing mandated law with locations crimes outside of the interbranch locations that they've had. Methods, too. Before the World Trade Center attack, Connecticut, intercities, and in cases, but also with the locations first, and with the campuses. They lock it in. They locked it in originally and still. They abridged science's self-value, the perfect world. Forsaken bad things happening, they blame other things other than themselves. Especially when bad things happen, they value it because they can use that to further where and how they've been using people's names sickly, where and how they've been using all identity ground locations sickly and pretending other. Because everyone blamed on other things other than themselves. Again, all the negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, only capable of being. Where and how we have people speaking, where and how we have simultaneously inherent active and progressive means that need to speak about where government and where people are positive and negative simultaneously in relation, in other words, it's not one thing or not. The only thing the way that is true is where it's the one thing. The one thing of volume that has us individual grouped and together. And identity / S, the invisible discernible, as the science that the sciences share. That languages will reveal teaching about the subject, the predicate identity, and the identity of value / value progression perfect. That all identities of value progression are semi-nature relationship to. All exceptions of exception nature are a demonstration of it, including how there are exceptions recorded, engineered, specifically for people syntax-wise to be used by them, so they can pretend other. Because this knew / knows how people of each age, nature, area would have to hide life aggressions. And so it knew that they would have to be able to know this too, to exploit it. So they effectively maintain remote uses of all standing, they have the people trained to answer phones for the news media, the people trained to speak for the news media. They tell them, this is how the public likes passions and emotions to be handled. This is how they perceive things. So this is how we're going to do it. Where and how all identity ground locations, including the branches of government, differentially, increasingly though, they're all maintained criminally foreign influenced. And the motivations of it go back to this method that is all identity ground locations engineered to catch lie progressions coming from all database relationships, coming from all identity ground, stewardships, locations, legal relationships, and overt criminal enterprises and private relationships to and as the recorded, confessed, demonstrated, and their evidence as pretending other. Roles with the schools. Bach sings to campus fools, return the name. Campus Marcius calls you home to game. So New York City, Little Rap Guy and Friends will help you through the Burroughs book as means. And the Burroughs book will be means to further that accumulated from the pamphleteers, which is a national / interstate / internation method / S that we could use and use with other countries. Hundreds of countries at once can syntax nature blame, a semi-ancient breaching method for forcing, tricking, hurting, persuading, defenses of abridged sciences that is relevant to obfuscation of to worse than obfuscation of to exploit, of identity of relationship to itself, and ties to our identity of syntax nature, of treatments of words like native / values like native. Legal bodies can't and won't speak honestly about what is Native American, and they already have entertained the short words, proper, tied to, and means properly, tied to, identity of the ground locations. They're all identity of the ground locations, let alone those most forsaken, tactically denatured, recorded by actually proper science treatments, designed to cause negative value nature progressions, actions, natures that a breaching method engineered because it knew people would have to blame other things, others, themselves, while trying to stay positive, also positive unto itself, as the soul longs to be and stay. So they speak and say. They're about that, honestly but dishonestly simultaneously, where it counts, how it counts, and when it counts. See how much all this, a whole bunch of crimes and hurt and bad things could have been prevented. That's recorded. But see, and also the investigators, and vetting identities, people from Hartford Hospital, intercities, where they have with the interbranch from my town, all private tied to them, like next to a Webb school. There's a Justin Klavinskis. I never tried to contact him in my life. One time I tried to contact his mother because he's involved with Facebook with some courts, judges and prosecutors in military families. And his wife, intercities, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in it, with people on off Central Connecticut State University. I never saw him on the campus of Central Connecticut State University. He's younger than me. I never saw him on campus. In other words, they were attaching me and others to fake locations, fake sequence relationships, fake words, fake audio and video. They have Facebook used by courts, being used and already having been used remotely, leading up to the World Trade Center attack, and in it, they have the families that work there, because they have everyone. They have this method with the databases, and where they have where the prosecutors and judges and their extended family members are manipulating sense and sensibilities of the intelligence community with who they want next to their kids. So they recorded, confessed, and demonstrated all kinds of ways. They have Afghanistan tied to Trinity College, and they have other countries tied to Trinity College with people like with the Zano family involved with identity thefts and frauds. Also with people from Central Connecticut State University involved with Rocky Hill campuses, Wethersfield campuses, where they have, where if you stay calm and react to things without getting boisterous or whatever. They further predicate acts against you and others. If you try to do it, to speak things simple, short words, proper, and with sequence, in other words, report sequence shifts or identity theft, frauds, roles with the kids, roles with those instances properly, uses of people's names properly. People will make instances where you have to correct them right there, or they're going to say, "Oh, later, why didn't you correct them right there? Why wouldn't you go get boisterous?" Don't forget, they make people shoot people that are unarmed, even like little kids, and even you see, they say, "Oh, look at the statistics. It's not that much." The statistics are leaving and having left out all the other ways and motivations, nature's needs and interests. All kinds of the locations, areas, and states are associated with justice systems where they claim people criminals, and they have innocent people when they're in jail because they can't afford bail and stuff like that. They use that. They have the people in the jail fabricating audio and video with their patients and criminals and killers, child sex offenders. Before they were caught, those same people that housed them in the jails, they were recorded involved with other natures of predicate acts, in the same natures of predicate acts with them, of child abuses. Same ones involved with the elderly homes, people that work with it. All victim predators. They don't even understand, because these are people involved with former directed FBI's co-defendants, federal criminals, since before they got caught. They were blaming other things, others themselves. They were blaming other things and others for what they were doing. They were attaching little kids and their family members to fake locations. They were pretending they were just saying lies. For example, differentially, sometimes they would pretend about elections laws, where they allow people to say things untrue about other candidates, including like with unions, because they have all kinds of money pilfering. They have all kinds of syntax captivation, where they pretend that, for example, the branches of government and people and overt criminal enterprises, private one, military, foreign, and domestic in collusion, they have methods, they have styles that are shared, like pretending to care about jobs, the value of a job, and the value of people without a job, and why and how they don't have it. The job locations, the job industries, all the branches of government under their identities shared too, all kept needing to hide lipoaggressions, roles with methods bound by one method onto all identity ground locations that is clear as day. Why and how there is people stacking in New York City. People are pretending to be about science anyway. You have people making convictions as experts on mental health in collusion with people with opinions across the board. Delusions wrought, criminally foreign influence, roles with identity ground locations with all these countries. Makes a syntax phenomenon where you have to bring up all these countries and names with people that have nothing to do with it or you, and they pretended other, and timed uses of that with on-off campuses connected instances, so they could, as people pretending other people don't have credibility, and you only know them because they sought you out for confessions. This is so we're going to show how different the branches of government are victims, but they're also victims predators. They have a method that uses their identity of volume, where they have to hide lipoaggressions. And this method knew they were going to do that. It's exploiting them as an identity of volume, as syntax nature, where value is nature as value, and slash value as nature, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. How it is simultaneous nature. The subject that is distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, again itself, as a trinity. That way, while simultaneously being bound as 5 identities of sequence / simultaneous nature. Distinct, 5 identities of it distinct. That's exception nature and demonstration, as is discernible, of how one identity of relationship to itself is. So what is not actually positive, so if it's positive or negative to itself, simultaneously, only positive to an extent that is only increasing, where it is positive to itself and will only stay positive to itself, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously as Earth's value. What is Earth's distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous relationship to the rest of space nature? It is its distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous relationship to itself as itself. Prayer is in relationship to uses of a God method, of a God variable with algebraic consciousness. This is per science. This is not a method of prayer being prevented because we have people. It's already if they were legitimate, but people are pretending. This should be discerned. But we have a nature of interbranch corruption and interreligious locations that make convictions about other people's names they don't know, after they won't and while they won't follow mandated law. The Archdiocese of Hartford won't follow it on Facebook. They're victims that are scared, maybe, and probably to counter and demonstrably to counter how the overt criminal enterprises, killers, and people that communicate with them, and our inclusion also with the branches of government individually grouped together, and the news media. So they have sense and sensibilities where they already make convictions, defended premises treatments that can't afford to counter when someone asks to have countered people involved with identity thefts and frauds against them through the churches, as people involved with child sex offenders on the campuses further, with a principal child offenders campus, and with a whole bunch of other campuses simultaneously, because that is also brought up through the process of revealing this by confessions and demonstrations from people on Facebook that are also recorded themselves unrealizingly involved with predicate acts with and as people on all sides of the campuses too, and on sides next to that, involved with identity theft, fraud. Everyone's speaking through others, selves with the branches of government recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed predators that are making allegations against people because they've been fabricating audio and video about them into databases. So they simultaneously can't afford to have discerned what and how the Constitution's surface values were actually intended to be valued and defended as syntax nature, as function nature, as a value/value progression, as an identity of the ground, relationship, identity of relativity to its identity of relativity. That relative as science, as that coming to, from, as, with, and for itself, distinctly onto Earth, where it can make more positive that is more positive onto itself. That is also positive onto itself, and where and how identity has a relationship to positive and negative. This way, because we are its way. We are not invented. And where and how we are being reinvented, nature is demonstrating negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, in demonstration of that. But those were all already having been, and they're increasingly valued having been employed for everyone to pretend other, and then to defend that, simultaneously defending treatments of positive and negative that are in collusion with that which is actually motivating and having motivated the worst actually having occurred instances to all identity ground locations, and as how they have actually went down. See, they're putting fake things in where they're using crime scenes to hide their roles with a crime method that has all identity ground locations. Has them in collusion with that. So, respond for, YouTubers, Russian YouTubers, Afghanistan root YouTubers, North Korean, South Korean YouTubers. Our countries are recorded involved with psychology racketeering and drugs crimes and medicines crimes and logic racketeering, identity thefts and frauds rolls together with identity ground locations uses. My town's police chief 1 year ago is involved with families and with their own, with predicate acts on my street, with a whole bunch of other nations that were our times, and uses of Facebook with the principal sex offenders campus, clear as day, with female judges and female and male pretending emotions and passions, and or the opposite too, recorded that way too, pretending that justice is a sick thing, pretending that they believe that they should be scary so people don't want to commit laws, to hide how they are offensively, involved with predicate acts of fact-cheating nature oriented, and worse, with killers and child offenders, and people involved with data racketeering, and people involved with uses of the value/value progression we are, as sequence/simultaneous nature. It's all right if they want to debate such. Have them respond for the forging names, switching names, falsified police reports rolls that various natures of Connecticut courts and police forms have with Wethersfield police, intercities and intercampuses, worse than interstates. They have shoreline communities, have the kids of the intelligence community, and communications with, people associated with, then you have to use people's names. It makes it sound like you know them. This is relevant to how they use investigators, and sense and sensibilities, and reactions and uses of words/phrases. Complete possession through reactions, proper, maintained, improper, while everyone's pretending proper at the same time. This built what is simultaneous the same way computers could, for example, before they could have a binary number, and but when they speak of binary, they sequence shift. You press down a key or a group of keys. This is identity of location in a value/value progression. This is a sequence/simultaneous nature relationship. Then it is given a binary. It is given a number. One program is simultaneously looking for that. For what sequence? Of what location? Of what letter or number or group of keys? That's identity. That's identity of volume. That's before the binary. Simultaneously, then inside the computer, it's given a binary number, which that location can be, the only reason is because the number means nothing. The identity means something. So now they have another program that can use that number, even though it's not that number, it's a letter or a different number on the keyboard. It can use that number by multiplying whatever. It can figure out what that number is. So it can figure out the identity is. The identity of the letter. See, but they don't explain it like this, how computers work. They keep things obfuscated and or they make them simple as criminal insidious natures of positive and negative treatments because of simultaneously how identity is used by what is exploiting how we're a sequence/simultaneous nature as a value/value progression. We are an increasing identity of volume as a value/value progression, bound. All gather round. A trinity/S is inseparable from it, as the value of each thing. So there are not just so then the countries are kept hurting each other and motivated to do it because it maintains the mean syntax nature, identity treatment nature, for a lack of integrity to pretend other, to pretend it couldn't fathom that and how its inclusion with Russians, because it counters them. That and how its inclusion with other countries, because it counters them. But their inclusion, because they're recorded, confessed, this is what is actually, there's also evidence of it here and there. There's people, they have people that walk up to people and make confessions. Informal, Harvard Hospital has a Russian woman that says she's Russian. Recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, involved with other Russian families associated with the Leahy family, involved with fake words with me and with a whole bunch of people in Britain Superior Court and with Hartford courts, leading up to the World Trade Center attack, and since, and 3 times formally with Hartford Hospital. They forced me in there for mental evaluation because I raised my voice. One time for days until I told someone, I said, I'm going to do it until they call the police without me telling them why. Because I knew I would catch them fabricating audio and video more, which is a method/S they are recorded with. They understand the methods they use, like separating subjects. Well, I don't know, I don't understand that, so let's speak about this subject. And so that this is relevant. This is why and how it's relevant, where and how they're fabricating audio and video to replace what is actually recorded. The Wethersfield police. They said they use this method. They separate subjects, and they say, well, I don't know about that. And then they fabricate audio and video. So they're pretending that they have things that are truly written, but they have exceptions to them exploited, like with statutes and precedents. So they value statutes and precedents criminally foreign influenced. So they value that while they are speaking for things like Jim Crow laws. So they simultaneously can't afford all that is actually simultaneously immediately relative and or relativity as what is actually the answer/S to what Jim Crow laws were about, to what slavery was about, to what the worse than dividing and conquering. I mean, worse than not conquering, worse than dividing and employing to self-valued roles of Native Americans A through Z, forced to entertain and self-value the real causes of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, natures, and denatured identity, ground, locations, for time, reasons, blamed on other things other than themselves. Real quick, they have to say, blame it on a white man. Oh, I know what he's saying, though. But no one realized that all it needed was everyone to evaluate, to make what is simple and complex actually properly discern, in the words about the how the identity grounds tactically denatured. It's not but a system that is using our unity's means, our nature's wanted, to afford things. They have the standards of what dollars can afford and things like that. You can't take that through, let companies and their employees decide that without noting. We'd have to have everyone do it, because those companies and the employees are also involved with all that, with the line progressions that are involved with the methods recorded bound on all identity ground locations, especially those most forsaken. There are methods bound on that, the same way there are methods of the computer doing math to figure out what location of key was pressed. The identity began to be the value, it stays the value. The math part is after. So we have sequence shifts right up front with the sciences individually grouped it together. Then they pretend it's complicated in ways and they use how it is complicated lies about it. Their self-value lies about computers because they're not really complicated.